Hey everyone, welcome to my channel from start to now. If you love uncovering hidden stories from history, you're in the right place. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss our future videos. Let's dive in. Have you ever wondered why the history of Greece, the birthplace of philosophy, democracy, and some of the world's greatest ideas, feels incomplete? Why do we only hear about famous names like Plato, Aristotle, and Alexander the Great, while the deeper, stranger, and more fascinating stories remain hidden? Today, I'm going to take you on a journey into Greece's untold past, forgotten discoveries, secret stories, and mind-blowing achievements that even modern scientists struggle to explain. By the end of this video, you'll never look at Greek history the same way again. Greece's hidden past is far bigger than what most schools ever mention, and when you start peeling back the layers, you realize just how massive, complex, and globally influential this civilization truly was, far beyond the neat, simplified version found in textbooks. Most people only hear about a few iconic pieces: Athens, Sparta, a couple of philosophers, maybe the Olympic Games, and of course myths like Zeus, Hercules, and the Trojan War. But the real history of Greece is a sprawling network of ideas, cultures, migrations, experiments, failures, scientific breakthroughs, political revolutions, and human stories that shaped the very foundation of the modern world. What we learn in school is usually a highlight reel, but the real thing is a full cinematic universe that stretches thousands of years, filled with twists, innovations, rivalries, and surprising connections. When most students imagine ancient Greece, they think of a single country or unified nation, but the truth is that Greece was never one big kingdom with a single ruler. It was a constellation of hundreds of independent cities, states, islands, and regions, each with its own government, culture, traditions, beliefs, and innovations. Athens wasn't just competing with Sparta. It competed with Corinth, Thebes, Argos, Rhodes, and dozens more. And beyond mainland Greece, there were Greek colonies across the Mediterranean: Italy, Turkey, Egypt, France, Spain, Libya, creating a vast web of exchange long before Europe even existed as a concept. That global network spread Greek ideas everywhere, influencing local cultures and absorbing new knowledge in return. So Greece wasn't just a place. It was a global engine of cultural fusion. Schools usually present Greek mythology as entertaining stories, but the myths were something deeper. They were a cultural operating system, a way of understanding human nature, emotions, morality, power, and the unpredictable forces of the world. These myths traveled across continents, shaping literature from Rome to the Middle Ages to the Renaissance and even modern Hollywood. The archetypes we use today: heroes, mentors, tricksters, underdogs, tragic flaws, were all pioneered by Greek storytellers. And the mythology that students view as simple fantasy was actually full of coded lessons about psychology, society, leadership, and human weakness. The Greeks weren't just telling stories. They were building the blueprint for Western storytelling. Then there's philosophy, which most schools touch on lightly by naming Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. But Greek philosophy was more than a few famous thinkers. It was the birth of critical thinking, logical reasoning, ethics, metaphysics, biology, political theory, and scientific method. Greek thinkers weren't just sitting around pondering life. They were laying the foundation for every major intellectual movement that followed: Roman law, Islamic philosophy, medieval theology, Renaissance science, and Enlightenment political theory. The fact that almost every modern university still teaches Aristotle isn't a coincidence. It's evidence of how deeply Greek inquiry shaped global knowledge. Schools also skip over the scientific and technological side of Greece. The Greeks were inventing early computers like the Antikythera mechanism, designing maps and geography charts, calculating Earth's circumference with incredible accuracy, building advanced architecture with precise mathematics, and exploring medicine in ways that were centuries ahead of their time. Hippocrates introduced medical ethics still used today. Archimedes created machines, war tools, and mathematical formulas that engineers still use. Pythagoras and Euclid built the backbone of geometry used in physics, architecture, coding, and engineering. These weren't small contributions, they were world-shifting milestones. Another overlooked truth is that Greece's influence didn't die when Greece fell. When the Romans conquered Greece, they didn't destroy Greek culture. They absorbed it entirely. Greek teachers, Greek art, Greek science, Greek philosophy became the backbone of Roman civilization. And when Rome later collapsed, Greek knowledge traveled again, preserved by the Byzantine Empire, and then translated during the Islamic Golden Age, where scholars expanded on Greek astronomy, medicine, mathematics, and philosophy. That knowledge later flowed into Europe and helped spark the Renaissance. So in a way, Greek civilization powered multiple ages of progress across continents, keeping its influence alive for millennia. Yet one of the most fascinating parts is how Greek ideas continue to shape modern life. Democracy, while imperfect in its ancient form, planted the first seeds of the political systems used today. Courts, juries, debates, civic participation, all have Greek origins. Theatre, comedy, tragedy, public speaking, and speeches come directly from ancient Greek traditions. Even sports, fitness culture, and the idea of training the body and mind together came from Greek ideals. When you watch the Olympics or see athletes talk about discipline, glory, and victory, you're witnessing traditions rooted in ancient Greece. Education systems, scientific research, political debates, literature, medical ethics, architecture, mathematics, psychology, art theory, all of them carry Greek fingerprints. The average person uses Greek-based concepts every day without even knowing it. And yet, classrooms often reduce all of this to a short chapter or a small section in a world history book. What makes Greece's hidden history so powerful is how interconnected it is. It wasn't just a civilization that existed a long time ago. It was the starting point of countless ideas that evolved, transformed, and spread across continents, shaping societies that never even met ancient Greeks. Even today, new archaeological discoveries, sunken cities, ancient tablets, forgotten temples, continue to reveal missing pieces that challenge what historians thought they knew. And each discovery expands the picture, showing that the Greek world was even more advanced, more global, and more influential than anyone realized. The real history of Greece is a reminder that the world we live in didn't appear overnight. It was built, layer by layer, by civilizations like Greece that questioned, experimented, explored, imagined, and created. And when you understand how deep that influence goes, you begin to see Greece not as a chapter in history, but as one of the foundational forces that shaped the entire modern world. Most people grow up thinking of Greece as a single country with one identity. But the real story is far more complicated, far more dynamic, and far more interesting than anything taught in school. Ancient Greece was never a unified nation in the way we imagine countries today. Instead, it was a vast collection of independent states, islands, and territories scattered across the Mediterranean, each with its own rules, traditions, ambitions, and personality. Athens wasn't the capital of Greece, and Sparta wasn't its rival in a national sense. They were individual worlds with completely different systems of government, beliefs, and lifestyles. And that diversity is what allowed Greece to become such an engine of innovation. These states competed, argued, sometimes united, often battled, and constantly pushed each other to be better. This competition created an environment where ideas evolved faster, technology progressed quicker, and culture developed in directions no one could predict. It was like hundreds of small laboratories of human possibility scattered across the ancient world, each experimenting with its own version of society. If you visited ancient Greece during its peak, you would not be walking into a single culture, but into a mosaic of worlds. Athens was a democracy that valued debate, theatre, philosophy, and learning, where citizens were expected to use their voice and minds. Meanwhile, Sparta was a militaristic society where discipline, strength, and obedience were the highest values, and where equality existed in a strange, rigid form that revolved around warfare. Corinth was wealthy and commercial, a hub of trade and luxury. Thebes was known for its warriors and political experiments. Rhodes was a center of naval power and education. Dozens more city-states, each with its unique goals, lived side by side. This variety created a constant exchange of ideas, but also constant tension. The Greeks were united by language and religion, yet divided by ambition, pride, and identity. And because no single group ever fully dominated the others for long, Greece became a place where no idea was safe from challenge. If someone in one city invented a new political system, another city might respond by inventing its opposite. If philosophers in one region proposed a theory, a rival city-state might dedicate itself to disproving it. This kind of intellectual and cultural friction didn't limit Greece, it fueled it. The geographical setup played a huge role. Greece's land is mountainous and broken into isolated regions, forcing people into small independent communities rather than one large kingdom. These natural borders prevented any one ruler from conquering all of Greece early on, which allowed dozens of different systems to grow at the same time. And because Greece is surrounded by the sea, the ocean became its highway. Greek sailors traveled to Egypt, Persia, Phoenicia, Cyprus, and Italy, opening their minds to foreign knowledge and bringing back new ideas. Instead of being closed off, Greece became a crossroads of civilizations. These outside influences blended with local traditions, and the result was a culture that was always absorbing, reshaping, and reimagining everything it touched. Greek colonies spread this diversity even further. Long before modern nations thought about expansion, the Greeks had already established settlements across the Mediterranean. In southern Italy, Sicily, Turkey, North Africa, France, Spain, and the Black Sea region. These colonies weren't simply outposts. They were fully functioning Greek cities with theaters, temples, markets, and schools. They created a network of communication and cultural exchange that connected continents. What schools rarely explain is that these colonies helped create the first truly international Greek identity. A philosopher born in Asia Minor could travel to Athens to teach. A scientist in Sicily could inspire thinkers in mainland Greece. A merchant in Egypt could bring new mathematics or technologies back to his home city-state. Knowledge flowed in every direction, and this flow was what made the Greek world feel larger than itself. This diversity also shaped Greek mythology, politics, and values. The Greek gods weren't fixed or uniform. Different regions worshipped them differently. A goddess might be associated with war in one place, with love in another, with the sea somewhere else. These variations reflected local beliefs and environments. The political systems were just as varied: democracy in Athens, monarchy in Macedonia, oligarchy in Sparta, aristocracy in Corinth, and hybrid systems everywhere else. Instead of choosing one perfect form of government, the Greeks tested them all. Some worked, some collapsed, some evolved, but every attempt added a new layer to human political history. The cultural output of this diverse world still shapes society today. Drama grew out of the competitive spirit between city-states that wanted to prove who had the greatest poets and storytellers. Philosophy emerged from the debates in public squares where citizens argued about ethics, truth, and the meaning of life. Sciences grew from competition among thinkers who wanted to solve the mysteries of nature faster than their rivals. Even the Olympic Games were born from this competitive energy. City-states didn't just want to win battles, They wanted to win honor, influence, and fame in every form. And in a way, this competition created a momentum that pushed Greece forward, turning it into one of the intellectual centers of the ancient world. But beneath all this brilliance was another truth. Greek diversity also created conflict. The Peloponnesian War between Athens and Sparta devastated the Greek world. Rivalries weakened Greece, making it vulnerable to outside powers like Macedonia and eventually Rome. Yet even in these struggles, Greek identity transformed rather than disappeared. When Macedonia conquered Greece, Greek culture influenced the conquerors so deeply that the Macedonians themselves became champions of Greek learning and expansion. When Rome took over, it wasn't the end of Greek diversity, it was its global rebirth. Greek ideas spread through the Roman Empire to Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Greek schools, Greek books, Greek arts, and Greek sciences became the foundation of education for centuries. What began as a patchwork of small independent states evolved into a cultural force that would shape the future of entire civilizations. This is why the real story of Greece is so powerful. The diversity of its states wasn't a weakness. It was the very engine that drove innovation, creativity, and expansion. Without that mix of identities, beliefs, rivalries, and ways of life, Greece would never have become the birthplace of democracy, philosophy, science, theater, and so many ideas that still define modern society. And when you see Greece not as one country but as a world of competing ideas, you finally understand how such a small region produced such massive influence across thousands of years. When you look closely at Greece's true history, something becomes immediately clear. This wasn't just a European civilization isolated within its own borders. Greece was a bridge, a connector, a meeting point between three enormous worlds, Africa, Asia, and Europe. And that position allowed Greek culture to absorb, refine, and transform ideas on a scale most people never learn about in school. The typical classroom version of Greek history focuses mainly on Athens, Sparta, and a few well-known philosophers. But the deeper truth is that Greece grew powerful not because it stood alone, but because it stood in the middle of constant cultural exchange. Greek sailors, merchants, scholars, and travelers crossed seas, visited foreign kingdoms, studied in distant temples, and brought home knowledge that would eventually help shape the future of the Western world. Instead of being a closed-off civilization, Greece operated like a cultural sponge, taking in influence from all sides and mixing it with its own creativity to produce something the world had never seen before. This connection began with geography. Greece's coastline is one of the most complex and jagged in the world, filled with natural harbors and easy launching points for ships. In a time when roads were slow and dangerous, the sea was the fastest highway, and Greece sat right in the center of it. To the east lay rich civilizations like Persia, Phoenicia, and Mesopotamia. To the south lay Egypt, a kingdom whose knowledge stretched back thousands of years. To the west lay the growing powers of Italy and the islands of the Mediterranean. Any culture placed in this position would become connected by default, because ships constantly moved through these waters carrying goods, ideas, stories, and discoveries. And the Greeks were naturally curious people. They explored, traded, learned, and adapted. This constant movement of ideas shaped Greek culture more deeply than most textbooks ever admit. Egypt played a massive role in this transformation. Greek thinkers traveled to Egyptian temples and studied mathematics, astronomy, agriculture, medicine, and architecture from priests who preserved knowledge much older than Greece itself. Some of the earliest Greek philosophers, including Thales and Pythagoras, are said to have learned in Egypt before returning home. Egyptian geometry helped inspire Greek mathematics. Egyptian religious symbolism influenced early Greek mythology. Even architectural techniques. such as stone columns and monumental building design, echoed Egyptian styles. Instead of the Greeks inventing everything on their own, they absorbed ancient African knowledge, reinterpreted it through their own thinking, and then re-exported it across the Mediterranean. To the east, Greek contact with Phoenicia and Persia opened entirely new worlds of influence. The Phoenicians, expert sailors and traders, introduced the Greeks to a writing system that would evolve into the Greek alphabet, the very foundation of Western literacy. Without Phoenician influence, the Greek language as we know it would never have developed into the writing system that spread through Europe. Persian culture also shaped Greek ideas about governance, empire, and diplomacy. Although schoolbooks frame Greece and Persia only as enemies, especially during famous battles like Marathon and Thermopylae, the reality is that cultural exchange continued even during conflict. The Greeks admired Persian engineering, wealth, and organization, while Persian elites admired Greek philosophy and art. Many Greek thinkers traveled into the Persian Empire, found patronage there, or exchanged ideas with Eastern scholars. Far from being opposites, these civilizations pushed and influenced one another for centuries. Further connections emerged through Greek colonization. When Greek settlers established new cities in Asia Minor, the Black Sea region, North Africa, and southern Italy, they inevitably blended with local cultures. In these colonies, Greek architecture mixed with Near Eastern design, Greek religion mixed with local gods, and Greek political systems merged with existing traditions. These hybrid cities became centers of innovation where multiple cultures interacted every day. They created shared communities where a philosopher from one region could meet a sailor from another, where a scientist could access new materials or techniques, where storytellers could hear legends from foreign lands and turn them into epic poems or plays. This constant blend of cultures is part of what made Greek philosophy so groundbreaking. Greek thinkers didn't just create ideas out of thin air. They studied older systems from Egypt, Mesopotamia, Persia, and Phoenicia, then pushed them further. They asked new questions, challenged traditions, experimented, debated, and sought universal principles. These philosophical ideas traveled back across the Mediterranean, influencing societies that had originally inspired them. It was a cycle of exchange, growth, and reinvention that stretched across continents. Greece's connection to Asia also shaped its military and political development. When Alexander the Great began his campaigns, he didn't simply conquer territory. He created a world where Greek and Asian cultures merged. In Egypt, he founded the city of Alexandria, which became the intellectual capital of the ancient world. In Persia, he adopted elements of Persian administration. In India, his armies encountered philosophies and scientific ideas that later trickled back into Greek thought. His empire stretched across 3 continents, and wherever Greek influence spread, local cultures influenced the Greeks in return. Alexandria became home to the greatest library of the ancient world, where scholars from Africa, the Middle East, and Europe studied together. This became the birthplace of discoveries in medicine, astronomy, engineering, and mathematics that shaped civilizations for centuries. Even after Greece fell politically, its role as a bridge never ended. When Rome conquered Greece, it absorbed massive amounts of Greek knowledge, art, literature, architecture, philosophy, science, and political ideas. The Romans expanded this knowledge across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Later, during the Islamic Golden Age, scholars in places like Baghdad, Cairo, and Cordoba preserved and expanded Greek texts, adding new discoveries and interpretations. Greek ideas reached new heights in mathematics, medicine, astronomy, and philosophy because of collaboration with scholars from Africa, Persia, and the Arab world. These improved versions of Greek knowledge eventually flowed back into Europe and sparked the Renaissance, a time of rebirth directly fueled by the rediscovery of Greek ideas blended with Islamic innovation. This is why Greece's role as a global bridge matters so much. It wasn't a civilization untouched by others. It was a civilization shaped by many cultures, and in turn, it shaped them back. Greece absorbed scientific knowledge from Egypt, writing systems from Phoenicia, administrative models from Persia, artistic influences from Asia Minor, and spiritual ideas from older mythologies. It synthesized all of this into something new, something powerful, something that would influence the world long after Greece stopped being a political power. Modern science, democratic ideals, philosophical debate, Western literature, mathematical theories, theatre, and artistic styles all carry traces of those ancient exchanges. When you see Greece through this wider lens, you begin to understand that its greatness didn't come from isolation. It came from connection, curiosity, and the willingness to learn from every culture it touched. When people learn basic history, they often get the impression that once a civilization falls, its influence ends with it, but Greece completely destroys that idea. The fall of Greece wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning of Greece's transformation into a global cultural engine. Even after Greek city, states lost their independence, their ideas, discoveries, and ways of thinking began spreading faster and wider than ever before. This is one of the greatest untold truths about Greek history. The moment Greece stopped being a political power was the moment it became an intellectual superpower. Its knowledge flowed into the Roman Empire, then into the Islamic Golden Age, and later into the European Renaissance. The world didn't just preserve Greek ideas. It expanded them, strengthened them, translated them, and pushed them into places the Greeks themselves could have never imagined. That's why the Greek legacy still forms the backbone of so many modern systems we use today. The process began when Macedonia conquered the Greek city-states. Most people think of this as the moment Greece ended, but that's not what actually happened. Alexander the Great didn't destroy Greek culture, he amplified it. He spread Greek language, art, science, and philosophy across his empire, from Egypt to Persia to parts of India. Wherever Alexander went, he built Greek-style cities, theatres, libraries, and learning centres. Greek became the common language across huge regions, which made communication between cultures easier than ever before. Scholars from Asia, Africa, and Europe could suddenly study together, exchange ideas, and combine their knowledge. This multicultural fusion made Greek thought more global, more powerful, and more influential than it had ever been during the days of independent city-states. One of the greatest examples of this transformation was the city of Alexandria in Egypt. After Alexander's conquest, the Greeks founded Alexandria as a major center of learning, trade, and science. The lighthouse of Alexandria became a wonder of the world, and the Library of Alexandria became the largest and most advanced research center in history up to that point. Scholars there didn't just read Greek works. They added to them, questioned them, corrected them, and built new discoveries on top of old foundations. Astronomers like Eratosthenes calculated the size of the Earth with shocking accuracy. Mathematicians like Euclid formalized geometry in a way still used in classrooms today. Doctors like Herophilus and Erasistratus advanced medical science by studying the human body in ways earlier societies feared. All of this happened outside of Greece, proving that Greek knowledge had entered a new phase, no longer limited to one region, but becoming a shared human inheritance. When the Romans rose to power, they conquered Greece politically, but became conquered by Greek culture mentally. Roman elites studied Greek philosophy. Roman architects copied Greek design. Roman playwrights adapted Greek stories. Roman religion blended with Greek mythology. Greek slaves often became teachers, scholars, and advisors within Roman households because of their education. The Romans admired Greek intellect so deeply that they considered Greek literature and philosophy essential to becoming a truly educated person. Rome spread Greek ideas across vast territories: modern France, Spain, Britain, the Middle East, and North Africa. Wherever Rome built cities, it built theatres, public squares, lecture halls, and libraries modelled after Greek originals. Greek thought became so normal within Rome that many people forgot its origins, assuming it was simply part of Roman culture. The shift continued long after Rome's political power faded. During the Islamic Golden Age, scholars from places like Baghdad, Damascus, Cairo, and Cordoba translated hundreds of Greek philosophical and scientific texts into Arabic. They didn't just translate, they improved. They corrected errors, expanded formulas, built new instruments, experimented, and turned ancient Greek theory into practical science. Thinkers like Al-Farabi, Avicenna, and Averroes wrote commentaries on Aristotle and Plato that became standard reading across the Middle East and eventually Europe. Mathematicians like Al-Khayyach advanced Greek and Indian numerical systems into full algebra. Doctors like Ibn al-Nafis expanded Greek medical ideas with new discoveries about the circulatory system. Astronomers blended Greek models with Persian and Babylonian star charts, pushing scientific accuracy forward by centuries. Without this period, many Greek works would have vanished forever, lost to fire, war, and time. Instead, they were preserved, protected, and elevated by civilizations that recognized their value. Centuries later, Europe rediscovered Greek knowledge through Arabic translations brought back from the Middle East. Scholars suddenly found themselves faced with ideas far more advanced than anything they had been taught. Greek philosophy shaped universities, Greek logic shaped government and law, Greek math shaped architecture and engineering, Greek stories shaped literature and drama. This wave of rediscovery helped ignite the Renaissance, a period of rapid innovation and creativity that transformed Europe. Artists like Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci studied Greek proportions and realism. Scientists like Copernicus and Galileo questioned the universe using Greek methods of observation and reasoning. Political thinkers like Machiavelli examined Greek ideas about power and strategy. The Renaissance wasn't just a rebirth of Europe. It was a rebirth of Greek thinking, pushed forward through centuries of preservation and reinterpretation by other cultures. Even modern democracies, including the United States, drew heavily from Greek models. The Founding Fathers studied Greek texts when designing systems of checks and balances, civic responsibility, and public debate. Universities built campuses inspired by Greek architecture. Medical and scientific terminology still uses Greek roots. Olympic sports revive Greek traditions of competition and athletic excellence. Western drama, storytelling, and literature rely on structures first defined by Greek playwrights. Even modern philosophical questions about ethics, reality, politics, and human nature trace back to discussions that took place in Athens thousands of years ago. All of this happened because Greece's fall didn't erase Greek influence. It set it free. When Greece was no longer restricted by geography or political boundaries, its ideas could travel anywhere, adapt to anything, and become part of cultures that would shape the world in new ways. Greece became a foundation stone for civilizations that came after it, not because it remained powerful, but because its curiosity, creativity, and intellectual achievements were too valuable to disappear. Greek knowledge became portable, global, and timeless, carried forward by scholars, empires, traders, warriors, and teachers who recognized its importance. And that's why Greece's legacy didn't die. It evolved, transformed, and ultimately became one of the most influential cultural forces in human history. Modern Western systems, government, medicine, mathematics, storytelling, sports, and philosophy still rely heavily on foundations created by ancient Greeks. And when you look closely at the world around us, the fingerprints of Greek civilization are everywhere, often hidden in plain sight. Take government, for example. Most people associate democracy with Athens, and while the system was imperfect by modern standards, it introduced a revolutionary idea that citizens could participate in decision-making, debate policies, and hold leaders accountable. This notion of civic responsibility, public discourse, and structured governance laid the groundwork for modern political systems. Concepts such as trial by jury, checks and balances, and voting, which are cornerstones of contemporary democracies, trace their origins to the experiments of the Greek city-states. While modern societies have expanded inclusion far beyond what Athens practiced, the philosophical and practical roots of participatory governance began with Greeks questioning the authority of kings, challenging aristocratic rule, and creating mechanisms to prevent concentration of power. This same spirit of inquiry, balance, and experimentation in governance continues to influence political theory, law, and civic life today. In medicine, Greek influence is equally profound. Hippocrates, often called the father of medicine, revolutionized the way humans approached health and disease. Rather than attributing illness to supernatural forces or divine punishment, Greek physicians advocated for careful observation, documentation, and rational treatment based on natural causes. Hippocratic texts introduced ethical standards for physicians, laying the foundation for medical ethics that persist to this day, including principles of non-maleficence and patient confidentiality. The Greeks also studied anatomy, diet, exercise, and lifestyle as essential elements of health. Their insights into holistic care, preventive measures, and the interplay between body and mind are concepts still embraced in modern medicine. Even terminology in contemporary health care, words like cardiology, neurology, and pediatrics, is derived from Greek language and thought, demonstrating how deeply integrated Greek contributions are in the very structure of medical knowledge. Mathematics, physics, and astronomy owe an extraordinary debt to Greek thinkers. Figures like Euclid, Pythagoras, Archimedes, and Eratosthenes were pioneers whose work continues to underpin modern science and engineering. Euclidean geometry forms the core of mathematics education worldwide, and Pythagoras' exploration of numerical relationships established principles that extend into trigonometry, algebra, and architecture. Archimedes' studies in mechanics, hydrostatics, and lever systems laid the groundwork for modern engineering and technology, and Eratosthenes' calculation of the Earth's circumference using geometric principles exemplifies the Greek drive to understand the natural world empirically. Greek contributions in logic, proofs, and systematic reasoning created methods that modern science and research depend on, and the scientific method itself, with its emphasis on observation, hypothesis, and experimentation, finds philosophical roots in the inquiries of Greek thinkers who questioned everything from the composition of matter to the laws governing planetary motion. Storytelling and literature are other domains where Greek influence is undeniable. Greek epics like the Iliad and the Odyssey established narrative structures, archetypal characters, and thematic complexity that have been emulated for thousands of years. Concepts such as the hero's journey, tragic flaw, moral dilemmas, and catharsis were explored in Greek drama and continue to inform novels, plays, films, and other forms of storytelling. Greek playwrights like Sophocles, Euripides, and Aristophanes not only entertained but engaged audiences in ethical debates, political criticism, and social reflection, setting the stage for storytelling as a medium for both education and cultural dialogue. Modern literature, cinema, and theatre owe a debt to these early innovators who experimented with narrative form, dialogue, and dramatic tension, creating timeless templates for human storytelling. Sports and athletic competition, particularly the Olympic Games, also trace their lineage directly to Greece. Ancient Greeks celebrated physical prowess, discipline, and the harmony of mind and body, principles that remain central to contemporary sports culture. The Olympic Games were more than athletic contests. They were social, cultural, and religious events that emphasized excellence, honor, and fair competition. Concepts such as teamwork, strategy, training regimens, and public recognition for achievement have their origins in these ancient practices. Even modern ideas of physical education, gymnasiums, and athletic coaching reflect Greek philosophies that connected fitness, skill, and ethical development. Sports were a way to cultivate not just the body but character and civic pride, and these values persist in modern sports systems, competitions, and international athletic events. Greek philosophy forms perhaps the most pervasive foundation for modern thought. Philosophers such as Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle didn't just theorize abstract ideas. They created frameworks for ethics, politics, logic, epistemology, and metaphysics that still structure intellectual inquiry today. Socratic dialogue encourages critical thinking and self-examination, a method that underpins education and debate. Plato's explorations of justice, governance, and morality provide a philosophical lens through which modern societies evaluate law and social structures. Aristotle's comprehensive analyses in logic, ethics, biology, and political science created systems of categorization and reasoning that are essential in modern scholarship, research, and pedagogy. Greek philosophy introduced the notion that humans could systematically study their world, question assumptions, and apply rational thought to solve practical and moral problems, a principle that resonates across science, law, education, and culture. Even beyond these specific domains, Greek influence permeates everyday life through architecture, language, and cultural values. Column designs like Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian are replicated in government buildings, museums, and memorials worldwide, symbolizing stability, beauty, and civic virtue. Greek prefixes, suffixes, and terminology shape scientific, medical, and technological vocabulary, making Greek contributions embedded in communication itself. The emphasis on rational inquiry, civic duty, balance, and human potential that characterized Greek thought continues to inform Western education, legal systems, political debate, and cultural ideals. Modern universities, research institutions, and democratic structures function in ways that are conceptually and historically linked to the experiments, successes, and failures of ancient Greek society. What makes Greek influence remarkable is its continuity over thousands of years. While empires rise and fall, cultures shift, and languages evolve, Greek contributions persist because they address fundamental aspects of human knowledge, society, and morality. They were foundational because they offered methods and frameworks, not just facts or traditions. Governments adopted principles of participation and justice. Scientists built on Greek methods of observation and logic. Artists and writers drew inspiration from Greek forms and archetypes. Athletes followed models of excellence and ethical competition. Philosophers created enduring frameworks for thinking about the world. The fact that Greek ideas are still central to modern systems highlights their universality and adaptability. In understanding modern society, it becomes clear that ancient Greece is not just a historical curiosity, but a living foundation. Democracy, medicine, mathematics, literature, athletics, and philosophy are not inventions of the last few centuries. They are continuations of Greek experiments, insights, and discoveries. Every modern political debate, scientific breakthrough, or artistic innovation echoes Greek thought, principles, and methods. The Greeks taught societies how to question, how to reason, how to strive for excellence, and how to preserve knowledge in ways that allowed future generations to build upon it. Even the failures, conflicts, and imperfections of Greek civilization offer lessons that continue to shape contemporary governance, ethics, and cultural practices. Greek civilization, in essence, created enduring systems and ideas that remain deeply woven into the fabric of modern life. proving that its legacy is not just historical but actively operational in the way humans think, create, and govern themselves today.